What's the first thought that comes to your mind when you think about going to the doctor for the usual checkup? You probably entrust them with your health life and count on them to find out whether there is something wrong and give you the adequate treatment for it. After all, doctors and nurses are in the business of taking care of us and making sure we're safe, right? Well, you'll be surprised at what the medical corps can do, as you will find out soon. Niles Howell was born in West Germany on December 31, 1976. Niall grew up in the coastal town of Wilhelmshaven in Lower Saxony. He said that he was never exposed to violence at home. He lived in a very peaceful household with loving parents who made sure he grew up in a protective and supportive environment. Niall's parents did everything they could to protect him from any harm and make sure he was always on the right path. Both his father and grandmother had dedicated their lives to helping people. Both of them were nurses, and Niles has always looked up to them. When it was time for Niles to apply for college, he decided that he wanted to be a nurse just like his father and his grandmother before him. Everyone was happy to hear that, as Niles also wanted to help others in his community. However, as time passed by, his motives for being a nurse would become much darker and more sinister. By 1997, at only 21 years old, Niles had completed his nursing training and started working as a nurse at Sank William Hospital. By 2004, Niles had begun to explore other opportunities in life. He was lucky enough to find love, and he decided to settle down. He and his longtime girlfriend got married in 2004, and soon after their marriage, a little girl was born into the family. In 1999, Niles decided to move on from his job at the hospital and started working at a different clinic. After Niles accepted a job offer at Oldenburg Clinic, where his tasks included would be tasked with taking care of patients in the intensive care unit at a cardiac or surgery ward. In August of 2001, only 2 years after Niles accepted his new job, a large meeting was called at the clinic. The board members were concerned that a shockingly large number of patients had been losing their lives over the last year. The board of the clinic explained that there was an unusually large number of deaths that had come out of nowhere. Even more worrying is that there was an increase in the number of resuscitations and an even bigger increase in the number of deaths only months after resuscitation. According to the board, 58% of these deaths took place while Niles was on duty. Niles knew that the board of the clinic was onto him, and they weren't going to let him loose. The following day, he would call in sick for work and would remain away from the clinic for over 3 weeks. For Niles, this seemed to be the perfect way to lay low and avoid too much attention. However, his hiding only made his situation worse. In the time Niles was off duty, the number of deaths dramatically decreased at the clinic. This only proved that Niles had a part in some of the unusual deaths that had been taking place recently. When he got back to work, Niles was asked by one of the head physicians in Ward 211 to transfer to a different unit. We don't know if this was due to a difference in opinion about whether he was actually responsible for the increasing death rate, or if the doctor only felt that Niles' skills would be better put to use in a different unit. Nevertheless, Niles accepted his proposal and was transferred to the anesthesiology unit later that year in 2001. And little did he know, this was going to be the point at which the heat amps up for him. The head physician at his new ward explained that he didn't like how Niles always forced himself into emergencies. Furthermore, he told Niles that every time he was involved in emergencies, the patients had a significantly higher chance of dying or facing serious medical difficulties. Soon after the conversation, Niles was approached by one of the board members of the clinic. The worker gave Niles an ultimatum. He was told that he would need to transfer units once again or be fired from his position with only 3 months of severance pay. If he accepted the transfer, he would be placed in the logistics unit. The unit did nothing but help move patients from one place to another throughout the hospital and clinic. He wouldn't be able to affect any patient's life that way. However, Niles didn't seem to like either of these options. Shortly after his conversation with the clinic leader, he started looking for a job elsewhere. Just a couple of weeks after the meeting with the clinic's head, Niles was given a very good reference letter by one of his superiors. His superior wrote that Niles was an incredible nurse who always delivered more than what was expected of him. The letter also acknowledged his dedication and cooperative conduct. By December of the same year, Niles had accepted a new job at another clinic, the Delman Horse Clinic. Unfortunately, Niles did not leave his unquestionable behavior at his former job. The dark cloud Niles brought with him to every patient he attended to followed him still. Merely weeks after he joined the new clinic, deaths rose to unprecedented levels. Fatalities began to rise at a scary rate, and just as in the previous clinic, they were almost only occurring when Niles was on duty. For the most part, the patients would be losing their lives to arrhythmia or other blood and heart-related problems. Many of his new co-workers preferred to stay away from him, not wanting to get involved in whatever was going on around him. And yet again, many of his superiors grew suspicious of him as well. However, none of them accused him of anything, as police would later find out in court proceedings. This was gross negligence on the part of the clinic, especially after the board knew that some of his co-workers found 4 empty vials of adz-maline while Niles was on duty. Adz-maline causes life-threatening arrhythmia and heart-related problems. Even though the clinic board were informed of their finding, nothing was done to remediate the situation. A brief investigation into the matter proved that no doctors had prescribed that medication recently, and none of the patients had been taking that medication. When the vials were found, all eyes were now on Niles. Everyone around him were so afraid of him that they did nothing about it. By June of 2005, after many deaths that could have been prevented, had anyone in the clinics Niles worked at made the whistle, the police were finally starting to close in on Niles. One of his co-workers had caught him intentionally sabotaging a patient's medical pump. As it turned out, he had been injecting it with admaline, the same chemical he was suspected of 3 years prior. This incident was enough to finally get the police involved, officially instigating an investigation on Niles. As you have probably guessed, they evidently found that Niles had been tampering with other patients throughout the years. Police requested every death record and time card for the previous 2 years, taking their investigation back to 2003. It didn't take the investigators long to start connecting the dots, and every trail they followed led back to Niles. The investigation would soon conclude that over the last 2 years, at least 73% of the deaths at this clinic were connected to Niles in some way or another. However, it seems that law works differently in Germany. Even though Niles' intentional tampering with patients' medication leading to their death was proven by investigators, Niles only had to pay a small penalty instead of being sentenced to prison for life, as he would have been if he lived in the United States. Niles was only facing 5 years behind bars and a temporary suspension of his nursing license. After being taken to trial with these allegations, Niles was found guilty in December of 2006. He was then imprisoned to serve his 5-year sentence. However, Niles wouldn't get off that easily. The moment his sentence was handed down, a team appealed his conviction. Soon enough, his conviction was to be reversed, but not the way you might be expecting.